Hey guys, so what I have for you today is an Israeli K98k Mauser. So these guns came about because the Israelis, they needed firearms just before the official sort of forming of the modern nation of Israel. The Israelis started looking to a lot of European nations and pretty much anyone who would supply them arms. And around 1947, they made a deal with Czechoslovakia to buy a bunch of their World War II German firearms, which included Mausers and MG34s. And so when they got these, the Mausers from Czechoslovakia, they were sort of how you see here, because the Czechs reworked their Mausers around, I think it was around 1946. They did things like add this enlarged trigger guard here, the winter trigger guard, and a couple other little things that they changed on the gun. And but when the Israelis got them, they were pretty good condition. A lot of them were unused because they were either made by the Czechs and the Germans never got them, or the Germans just left them in Czechoslovakia. So they were happy to sell them to the Israelis, and the Israelis were happy to buy them. So the Israelis used these throughout a lot of the wars in their early history. And then about the mid-1950s, the Israelis started looking at the new 7.62 NATO caliber. And I think they were looking at standardizing on that. And so they started a program for rebarreling their previously 8mm Mauser rifles to the new 7.62 NATO ammo. Which by the 60s, I think most of them had gone through and were converted. And that's what this one's gone through that process, and it was converted. So the Israelis used this rifle, I think, all the way up to the 1962 Yom Kippur War, and they were sort of a rear echelon, sort of designated marksman type of rifle, but they did see limited service in that war. And then in the late 1970s, the Israelis declared them obsolete and started selling them off. I think they started selling them earlier than that, actually, but they really started getting rid of them after that. And by the 80s, a whole lot of them, most of them were gone from Israel. Some stayed behind as police guns, but most of them ended up as guns as you see here in the United States collector's market. And so we're going to take a closer look at this, and I'm going to show you some of the differences between this particular Israeli Mauser and sort of a run-of-the-mill unmodified German Mauser. So let's take a look. So the biggest distinguishing feature probably of the Israeli Mausers, other than the large trigger guard, is this 7.62 stamping up here. They also added this to the bottom of the buttstock. 7.62. So this is if it was up on a rack, they could tell that this is a converted one without having to look on the receiver ring. The Israelis also restocked a lot of their guns, and in the Israeli stocks they added this finger grooves, which is reminiscent of the earlier German style stocks. And their stocks do not have a takedown disc. Instead, they do the sort of German Kriegsmodel style takedown hole, which is just a hole drilled straight through the butt plate and the wooden stock. So when you disassemble the bolt, you would just stick the whole striker firing pin in there for disassembly. This was much cheaper to do than inletting the takedown disc. These Israeli front sights are also a little different because they have a rod that goes through them. You can sort of see the holes for them. That is supposed to keep the front sight on there because, as the Germans found out in World War II, these front sights had a tendency to popping off and being lost in the field. So with that pin going through them, they definitely stay on much better. There is a sort of rumor about these guns that they went through a purification process, but that's not really true. It was sort of up to the individual soldier on if they wanted to peen out any of the Nazi markings on their guns, and this one they definitely did. You can see three sort of groupings of peening being done to the receiver, and what that is, that correlates to, I'll show you on another gun here. that correlates to these three little Nazi Eagle Waffenamps here that each have swastikas. So whoever peened out the Israeli Mauser, they didn't just stop at the swastika, they just peened out the whole Nazi eagle. But interestingly enough, they left the little Weimar eagle right here. So that was before Nazi Germany. So I guess they didn't think that was evil enough to be marked off their guns. So Israeli Mausers make a pretty interesting Mauser to collect. There's quite a few variations because they didn't just use German Mausers. They also got Mausers from countries like Norway and Ethiopia. So you'll have Mausers with different crests on top of it. You'll even get FN Israeli Mauser sometimes. And it's just a really neat part of the Mauser market that probably a whole lot of people don't recognize or rightfully respect. So thanks to Heritage Arms in Midvale, Utah for letting me take a look at this Mauser rifle. And I appreciate you guys watching. If you would please subscribe, that helps me out, and I'll see you next time.